Hey, are you here? Or are you just a hologram that came here to watch the Paul Leslie Hour? Either way, it's our true pleasure to present an interview with Jim Kweskin of the legendary Jim Kweskin Jug Band. It's a fascinating interview, but Jim's also going to treat us to an unplugged jug song. So what do you say we get this started? It's episode number 1068. Here's Jim. Here's Paul. Go!
Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Paul Leslie Hour. It's my great pleasure to be joined by singer, musician, recording artist. He's a jug band artist, Jim Kweskin. His latest record, which I'm holding up, is Jim Kweskin Duets with My Friends, Never Too Late. And there's another one forthcoming. I've just heard the single. Jim, hold up the forthcoming record and tell us about it.
Okay, it's called Doing Things Right. Let's see if I can get it in the picture here, right? There we go.
Yep.
That good? Okay. It's called Doing Things Right, and it's an album I made with a bunch of really great musicians. It's a whole band, the trumpet, trombone, saxophone, clarinet, fiddle, 2 guitar players, bass and drums, and it's a romp of Western swing, kind of somewhere between country music and traditional jazz, and a lot of good up-tempo fun stuff, and plus a beautiful singer by the name of Samoa Wilson, who sings a bunch of songs with me on that last album you just showed and this new one that's coming out. And it's got a trumpet player, a lady who also sings great, and she sings a song on the album. So, and one of the fiddle player, a guy named Matt Leavenworth, he and I do a duet together of a song called 4 or 5 Times. So it's got a lot of really fun stuff going on. The album's called Doing Things Right, and it's on Jalopy Records.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to that one. You know, in some ways, I think that you're like a song digger in that there are some wonderful, wonderful songs. There have been how many songs written throughout time, but you find these songs that are very, very interesting. Is that something that you're actively doing? Are you always looking for these old tunes?
Yes, and I have been for almost my entire adult life. I'll tell you, Paul, that a few years ago, I was up on stage playing a show for a wonderful audience, friendly. Most of my audiences are real friendly. And I was talking to them about music that I sing, because, I'm not a songwriter. What in the old days, you'd call me a songster or a song interpreter. But anyway, and nowadays, if you do a song that somebody else did or somebody else recorded or somebody else is known for, it's called covering it. And it's the common term. It's a cover bands, and this guy is covering a Beatles tune or a Taylor Swift tune, or who knows. You can cover a lot of songs from any era. So I said to the audience, so if I do a song that the last time it was recorded was 90 or 100 years ago, am I covering it? And somebody in the audience said, no, you're uncovering it. And I thought that was really great. I thought that was perfect, because that's what I like to do, is find these great old songs and bring them back to life.
So when you're going through and you're listening to these old tunes, which you and I both have an affinity for these classics, and some of them, they're not really classics because they're not heard of as much. What is it about a particular song that makes you say, you know what? I need to put my stamp on this. I want to record it, or I want to perform it.
Well, it takes a lot of different parts to make a song something that I feel like I can do. First of all, I have to like the song. That's the first thing. But it also, the melody, the rhythm, the way the words fit the melody, the rhythm of the words, the rhythm of the song, it all has to fit me. It has to fit my internal rhythm. And the song has to have words that, even if they're not, sometimes they're just nonsense words, but they have to have some sort of meaning, internal meaning, for me to be able to sing them, that that I feel comfortable with. That sounds like it's coming from me and not, I'm not copying somebody or imitating somebody. I can't tell you how many wonderful songs that I love that I've tried to sing, and I couldn't do them at all. And it's not that they're great songs; it's just not me.
You feel like it just didn't fit you.
Correct.
Can you tell us about the singers that have had the biggest influence on you?
That's a good question. I would say the ones that I listened to when I was first coming up were the jazz singers, Louis Armstrong, Fats Waller, from the swing and traditional jazz era. And then Jesse Fuller, Pink Anderson. I don't know if you know who these people are, but the Pink Anderson was a Carolina picker and singer of, up-tempo kind of jazzy kind of tunes. And Jesse Fuller sang. He wrote San Francisco Bay Blues and did a lot of songs. I like the songs that have a certain swing rhythm to them. So I even though I'm a folk singer, I'm also, connected to the world of early jazz. So, I mean, that's, my first band was a jug band. And if you think about what jug band music is, maybe a lot of people in your audience never even heard of jug band. They go back to the late 20s, recordings of them go back to the late 20s and early 30s. The bands were before that, but they didn't get recorded till the late 20s. And what to me, what jug band music is basically playing the old traditional jazz and blues, but instead of playing it on trumpets and trombones and tubas and clarinets, they're playing it on kazoos and washboards and washtub bass and jugs and fiddles and, folk instruments and homemade instruments. And that's kind of what jug band is, and that's kind of what I do. And so those singers who sang those songs are the ones that, influence me.
Well, a lot of people, they would maybe, I guess one of the more prominent names in jug band music would be John Sebastian.
Right.
Do you know him?
Oh, yeah. He and I have played together a number of times. I know him quite well. We're friends.
I figured you would be. And what I like about your recordings is I'm the kind of person that when it comes to these old tunes, I'm not necessarily limited, as you said, to what they would call folk. Some of the old jazz standards and some of the jazz pieces that didn't get as much play are just so interesting.
Well, the last 3 albums I've done, the one just before the one that you just held up, which is called I Just Want to Be Horizontal, is you may or may not have that one. That one is straight jazz, mostly sung by Samoa Wilson. And what we did was we dug up all the intro verses to all these songs. They're the songs that so many songs from the Great American Songbook have verses that start the song that have mostly been dropped over the years. And they're beautiful. So most of the time they're actually gorgeous. So we resurrected a lot of them. So that's what we did on that album called I Just Want to Be Horizontal. Not referring to sex, by the way. It's referring to being tired. Then the album you just held up is an album I did of duets with a lot of mostly women singers and musicians that I play with around the country. And that's a folkier album, although it has some swing stuff on it. Marianne Muldaur and I do a couple of swing tunes on there. So I jump genres. I jump around, it's folk, it's blues, it's jazz, it's country, it's Western swing, it's jug band music. It's wherever I can find a song that, fits me I'm happy to do it.
Well, I'm hoping you can tell us about this new single of yours, 4 or 5 Times. Mm-hmm. What was it about that particular song? How did you discover it, and what appealed to you about it?
Well, I've heard the song, and the song has been recorded like maybe 30 or 40 times by different bands, going all the way back to the early 20s. But the reason we did it on this album is because the fiddle player, Matt Leavenworth, sings it and plays it so beautifully. All I did was echo him. So I actually got it from him, our version of it. although I'd heard it by, McKinney's Cotton Pickers and a whole bunch of other swing bands and earlier jazz bands and have done that song. And also the Western swing bands from the Bob Wills kind and Milton Brown bands, all those Western swing bands, they did that song too. But the reason we included it on the album is because we had the fortune of having Matt Leavenworth, great fiddle player. I mean, one of the best. But he also loved to sing that song, and he and I had done it on stage a few times. So I said, let's do it on the record. So that's how that one came about.
Well, it sounds really, really great. I really enjoyed listening to it.
Thank you.
You have played with and recorded with some of the most respected musicians ever. And, we had Cindy Cashdollar on here, and lots of people were emailing and talking about how much they liked her. Is there someone that you want to work with or record with that you haven't yet?
Roberto Luthi.
Tell us about it. I don't know that one.
Yeah. Have you ever listened to the songs on Playing for Change?
I have, yes.
Are you with Playing for Change?
Yes, sir.
And there's a guy who plays slide guitar on a lot of those tunes. It's beautiful slide guitar. He's Italian.
Okay.
I don't even know if he's ever been to the United States. I've never met him. I don't know anybody who knows him. All I know is I fell in love with his slide guitar playing on those Playing for Change records. I would love to play with him someday.
Interesting. Well, you just never know.
That's right.
Now, going back to the Never Too Late, the duets album, there's some really, really great songs on there. I have to say, though, tell us about What Does the Deep Sea Say? That might have been my favorite one from the album.
Oh, wow. Cool. There's an up-tempo version of that song, a version of that song that Woody Guthrie recorded, which is where I first heard the song. But my first wife, and still my very good friend, Marilyn Kweskin, who was the mother of two of my children, rewrote the song, slowed it down, gave it new words, personal meaning. And then I had the fortune of my granddaughter, her granddaughter is a wonderful singer and songwriter. She lives in Nashville. And so I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to have Marilyn and my granddaughter sing that song that Marilyn wrote. Marilyn and I was doing that song in the early 60s. So it's, but I'm just so happy to do it with my granddaughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fiona Kweskin.
Well, what was it like when you were recording with her? How did that feel?
Oh, it's special. It's fantastic. I mean, she's such a sweetheart anyway, and she's a wonderful person and she's a great musician. And she's actually working her way into her own, she's a singer, songwriter. She's in Nashville. She's making records and videos and, and as we all do when we're young, struggling to, be noticed.
Right. Absolutely.
I love playing music with her, but I love playing music with a lot of people. Samoa Wilson. I've known Samoa Wilson her entire life. So she's, she calls me her uncle and I call her my niece, but we're not blood related. It's just that I've known her since she was a child. I had her on stage with me when she was 12 years old. So, it's all these people that I play music with. There's something personal about it for me, and it makes it all that much better.
Has there been a favorite compliment that you've gotten through the years?
Yeah, actually there has. I was at the Newport Folk Festival in the 60s, 5 years in a row. One of those years, they had a fiddle player by the name of Clayton McMitchen. They called him Pappy Clayton McMitchen. He had played with Gid Tanner and the Skillet Lickers back in the 20s with Riley Puckett and that whole gang. Most people probably have never heard of Gid Tanner and the Skillet Lickers, but they were a great fiddle band from the Appalachian area. anyway, he and I didn't play together at the Newport Festival. He played with some other musicians, and they wanted him to play the old-timey stuff. But he had also later on had a band that was a Western swing band. So we ran into each other at Newport, and he said, "Hey, if you ever get down where I'm my way, stop by." So he lived in Louisville, Kentucky. So I was on the road with my wife, and we called him up and said, "Hey, we're coming your way. Can we really come visit?" He said, "Yeah, I'd love to have you." So I went to his place, and we spent a day with him. And he had a treasure trove of things. He had a letter from Jimmy Rogers inviting him to play with him on the record that eventually became Peach Pickin' Time in Georgia. But then we played music together. And at the end of the session of us jamming together, he said to me, "Why didn't they have you play with me at Newport?" And that to me was the best compliment I've ever had.
Very, very nice comment. Yeah. Well, I'm curious, did you see this new Bob Dylan movie, A Complete
Yes.
Unknown?
Sure. My name is mentioned.
I heard. Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was sitting there in the theater when your name was mentioned, and I thought, I kind of know that guy. We've been corresponding. What did you think of the movie?
I thought it was a pretty good movie. Yeah, I thought it was a very good movie. Although it's a lot of inaccuracies, a lot of things that they made up or things that they revised stories to make them more interesting and fit the movie. But a lot of stuff didn't happen the way they mentioned it. And I thought the person who played Joan Baez did a fine job of acting, but Joan's voice was so powerful that there was no way they could even begin to replicate that unless they used her voice and anyway. So I thought that was a little weak. She was a fine singer, but she was no Joan Baez. The one funny thing that happened, I'll tell you a little bit about that. One event that happened in that movie is they have a scene where Bob Dylan is up on stage. Now he's doing his electric show at 1965. Bob Dylan Goes Electric. It was a big deal to people. And they have a scene where Albert Grossman, who was his manager, and Alan Lomax are having a big fight because Alan Lomax wants to cut the sound. Alan Lomax was a big folklore historian and collector. He did some amazing, wonderful things, but he was a bit of a snob as well. And he hated the sound. And so they made and then they had a fist fight and they're rolling around on the ground and the big hullabaloo between Alan Lomax and Albert Grossman. Well, in fact, I was there, and Albert Grossman and Alan Lomax did have a fist fight and did roll around on the ground, but it had nothing to do with Bob Dylan. And actually, when it happened earlier in that day, they had a small concert outdoor. They had a bunch of little outdoor concerts on smaller stages. They had what they called workshops, although they were just really concerts. They had the blues workshop. And the blues workshop was Alan Lomax was the host. And we had all these wonderful blues musicians like Sleepy John Estes and Booker White. And I'm not even sure which ones, Mississippi John Hurd or Skip James and so forth. Alan Lomax was proud to present all these wonderful, lesser known, but great traditional blues artists who were Black. And from the South, for the most part. Who was going to close the show was the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. And Albert Grossman was Butterfield Blues Band's manager, as he was the manager of Bob Dylan and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and my band, the Jim Kweskin Jug Band, and others. So Alan Lomax finally, at the end of the show, gets up to introduce the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and he says, "And now we have some white boys who are going to try and play the blues." And he gets off stage, and Albert Grossman was furious, flipped out, socked him, and Lomax socked him back. And next thing you know, they're wrestling around and rolling on the ground and had but the exact same kind of fight they showed in the movie, but it had nothing to do with Bob Dylan going electric.
Interesting. Good stories. So, where were you when you heard that you got a plug in the movie?
I just was watching it.
Yeah. You were in the theater?
I guess, yes, that's right. I did go to see it. Yes.
Yeah. I bet you that was cool.
Yeah. Well, Bob Dylan and I, we knew each other back in the early days, in the early 60s before he became famous. We were both, scrounging around looking for gigs. We were in Greenwich Village for a while. Actually, we played some gigs together. I was playing at the Gaslight Cafe on McDougal Street in Greenwich Village. I had a 2-week gig there, and so did some other musicians. We would take turns, and the way it worked, there were 4 shows a night. The first set was Peter Stampfel, banjo player, singer who went on to have the Holy Modal Rounders, and he was pretty well known at the time. Then there was me, and then there was Dylan, and then the 4th set was the 3 of us together as a trio singing old-time country and Woody Guthrie songs. That went on for 2 weeks. So that's when I got to know Dylan. But he was, like 20 years old or 21 or something. He was really young. Well, and he hadn't even made his first record yet.
Wow. Would you say that there is a song that you most identify with? The Jim Kweskin theme song, not necessarily your favorite, but
the song that most people associate with me when I get up on stage, the one I have the most requests for in the Jug Band was a song called Rag Mama. Originally done by Blind Boy Fuller, but the version I learned was from a guy who was a picker and singer in Berkeley, California when I went there in the early 60s. His name was Steve Talbot. And he did a great version of the song, and I really liked it, and I learned it from him.
Interesting.
I can do it for you.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I'll do it for you.
Alrighty.
So I'm going to do this song. Okay. Well, I'm going downtown with my hat in my hand, looking for a woman, ain't got no man. Might as well be looking for a needle in the sand, looking for a woman, ain't got no man now. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dum. Rag mama, come on, babe, let's do that rag. Get you one woman, you better get 2, one for your buddy and one for you. Better get a wife and a sweetheart too. Wife don't love you, but your sweetheart do now. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dum. Rag mama, come on, babe, let's do that rag. I never thought my gal would treat me so. Love a man in my back door. Come on, mama, what you know? You're gonna reap just what you sow. Now, dee-dee-dee-dee-dum. Rag mama, come on, babe, let's do that rag. So my gal with a man, she was holding his hand. I had a pistol in my pocket, blackjack in my back. I run outside with a half a brick, saying, I'm gonna get that so and so now. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dum. Rag mama, come on, babe, let's do that rag. All right, we're gonna rag on out now. Boom, dum, deedly dum, ski dum, the boom, boom, deedly dum, but down, dum, ski dum, ski dum, the boom, boom, ding dum, deedly dum, dum, deedly dum. Rag mama, come on, babe, let's do that rag.
Bravo.
Bravo. Thank you.
If you could give yourself any advice, the young Jim Kweskin, if you could go back when you were embarking on a career in music, what would you tell?
Oh, geez.
The young Jim Kweskin.
I don't know. I'm not sure that I would have done anything different than I have. I tell me to do things that were a mistake, but you got to make mistakes to learn. So I don't think I would do anything different.
Yeah.
I think I would tell myself anything than what I went through. My life experience has been, ups and downs and things that I wish I hadn't done, but I learned from them. And that you have to do things that, you're sorry you did, or you had to apologize for, or you hurt somebody's feeling, or you missed an opportunity. Those kind of things happen in life, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't want them to happen to me, and I would stop myself from those things happening. That's life experience. So I don't think I would give myself any advice at all.
Yeah. Would you say that Jim Kweskin fans have something in common? Is there a commonality?
Me besides being Jim Kweskin fans?
Yeah. Besides that.
Yeah, they like old time music. They like the kind of music that I like. There's just, I have a very devoted fan base, but it's not huge. I play clubs all over the country, and a few hundred people come to my gigs, unless I'm playing with other people, like in a festival or something like that, then I get to play for larger crowds. So, I don't fill up several thousand seating auditoriums. And I think a lot of that is due because the kind of music I play is only certain people like it or appreciate it or want to go hear it. The ones who do, they're wonderful, and I love them, and they love my music, and I love them loving my music, which is why I do this music. And so that's all I can say. It's they have appreciation for the great old songs.
Yeah. Would you say that you have a favorite songwriter?
Well, I don't know. Closest I could say is that the one who's done the most songs that I do, written the songs that I do the most, is Irving Berlin.
Yeah.
I've done about 6 or 7 of his songs, but I've also done, 6 or 7 Woody Guthrie songs. And I've done 6 or 7 Mississippi John Hurt songs that I am not sure he wrote or whether, where they came from. So it's a wide range, it's a big spread between Mississippi John Hurt and Irving Berlin.
Well, you're my kind of music person.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. I mean, I when I think about who I think the great American songwriters are, I do think of Irving Berlin right away, but then inevitably I'll think of Stephen Foster.
Yeah, I don't do any of his songs because they don't swing.
Right. I could see that.
But I do a couple of Duke Ellington tunes, and I do a couple of Jerome Kern tunes, and I've done a couple of Cole Porter tunes. So of the Great American Songbook.
What is the best thing about being Jim Kweskin?
Well, having a wonderful family. I have 3 children who are beautiful people. They all have children. My 2 daughters each have 2 children, and my son and his wife have 4. So I've got 8 grandchildren. I've got a loving and wonderful wife. That's by far the best part of my life. The next best part is being able to play music.
Yeah. Well, I always like to allow my guests to pretty much have the stage at the end. You can say whatever you like to anybody who's tuned in with us, and you can go anywhere.
Well, I think that what I've been all my life appreciated was the fact that if a song was great, a long time ago, then it's still great. Songs don't become less great just because they get old. Many people like what's new, and they're only interested in what's new. And that's not me. And there's a lot of other people that I know that feel the same way I do. In other words, a great song is a great song. And I'm really particularly love songs that have beautiful melodies. And modern music, a lot of modern music doesn't have much melody to it. Of course, rap doesn't have any melody to it, but even, hip hop doesn't. That's some, but not like, Stardust or Sophisticated Lady or, some of these wonderful tunes with incredible melodies. So to me, music, there's nothing wrong with loving old songs because they're beautiful.
Well put. Well, ladies and gentlemen, be sure and check out jimkweskin.com, Kweskin, jimkweskin.com. And of course, you're going to want to check out the new album. Hold it up and tell us what day that's going to come out.
I think it's the 28th of this month. And it's called Doing Things Right.
All right.
And there's the track sheet. You probably can't read it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Can you read it?
I can. Believe it or not, I know some of these songs. All right. Well,
it's with a big band, like I said. It's with trumpet, trombone, clarinet, saxophone, fiddle, 2 guitars, drums, bass. It's got a tuba on a couple of tunes.
You don't hear that every day, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
We thank you and appreciate you dropping in for the Paul Leslie Hour today. You can help the Paul Leslie Hour in our mission to provide independent media content like this by visiting www.thepaulleslie.com/support. We truly thank you. This is your announcer speaking. Performance of The Entertainer intro song and Corina Corina outro song, courtesy of John Primorano. Well, that's it for today. So until next time, be safe and be good.